Dear sleep, I'm sorry we broke up this morning. I want to take you back. The culture has a lot of idioms and cliches about sleep and sleeping. Sleep like a log. Let sleeping dogs lie. Sleep like a baby. Catch some Z's. To sleep upon it. Sleep tight. And you know what the origin of that one is? Before mattresses, it was a frame with ropes that you slept on with a cot or pallet, and you want to sleep tight because ropes sag. And one of my favorite for today, asleep at the wheel. Did you ever wonder why we sleep? I mean, you're spending a third of your life sleeping, and it's not like you have a choice. It's an essential part of life, like food and water. Sleep's an essential function that allows your body and your mind to recharge, leaving you refreshed. And when you wake up, you're alert on a good day. Healthy sleep also helps the body remain healthy and staves off diseases. Without enough sleep, the brain just can't function properly. I'm sure you know what that means. This can impair your abilities to concentrate, think clearly, and even process our memories. And if you only get a few hours of sleep, or if you don't get any sleep for several days, severe symptoms can develop, including hallucinations and psychosis. And after a few days without sleep, you're very unlikely to die, but you can't stay awake. Your body will collapse. But think about it. Why? Why do we sleep? I mean, at the end of the day, we become unconscious and paralyzed. Why? Is there an evolutionary trait that makes it an advantage to sleep a third of your life? The short answer is scientists don't know why we sleep. There's numerous explanations and there's huge arguments, and you can find reasons that they've been offered, but they're speculations, they're not answers. No one really knows why we sleep. Oh, but there's an abundance on data from the research on sleeping. And this is sleep deprivation studies and sleep studies, tons of studies. We know all about the different phases of sleep, what parts of the brain are active and what parts aren't, what the brain looks like when you're constantly disturbed in your sleep. But we don't know why we sleep. But sleep isn't essential to balance awake life. You know this. I mean, if you've had a bad night and you didn't get your normal amount of sleep, you suffer, if not in the morning, through the day. And it seems that our brains need time to recover to all this input we're getting when we're awake, to sort it all out and everything we've experienced. Research says that most adults require 7 to 9 hours of nightly sleep. Children and teenagers, a lot more. Now, a person I worked with in my previous career in the 1980s told me something very, very personal, and I'll just call him Bob. Bob shared with me for years he was moody, restless, and incredibly irritable. Bob wasn't sleeping well and rarely got a good night's rest. The medical profession took him through all sorts of drugs and tests and examination. And finally, after years, he stumbles upon one doctor that says, "Have you ever thought about getting less sleep?" Now, I'm an engineer. I worked with engineers, and Bob was an engineer. And so he started really getting into this. So he started sleeping less and less every night. And his optimum sleep was 3 to 4 hours. Suddenly, Bob was no longer moody, restless, or irritable, all without drugs. Now, you may have heard Thomas Edison famously said he only slept 4 hours a night. He thought it was a waste of time. But what's also in the data in the reports, he napped constantly throughout the day, hours at a time sometimes. So Edison, by some people's count, got 6 to 8 hours of sleep every day. It's just only 4 at night. But my friend Bob did not nap. He not only thrived on 4 hours of sleep, he suffered when he had more. Now, before you think Bob had this incredible life where all of a sudden he was given 4 hours a day to do whatever he wants, he led a very lonely life. His wife and his children slept. While they slept, Bob had to take care not to wake them. He read, watched movies, and pursued very quiet hobbies. But he was completely alone and lonely, and chose not to share his secret with anyone except me for fear of being labeled weird and misunderstood. Bob didn't nap like Edison, but many of us have a very tense relationship with napping. Now, research continues to explore the value of naps and expand. And there's all this research that says it's really beneficial sometimes to take naps of various length, but most companies aren't in favor of people napping on the job. It's just not part of our culture. And while a nap in the afternoon can be refreshing, many of us, including myself, feel guilty because we're sleeping during the day and we could be doing something. I mean, our culture promotes productivity and efficiency, and napping doesn't produce anything, not anything tangible. About naps, Bob Hope said it this way: I don't feel old. I don't feel anything till noon. Then it's time for my nap. But napping, sleeping, they come in many forms. Full disclosure, I was a sleepwalker as a child, and not a typical one. I would get up, unlock the door, leave the house. The door would wake up my father, and he would have to go out, and we lived on a farm, and so he would have to go out and find me and bring me back. So he put a latch on the door, way up high to where I couldn't reach it. So I went to another door and went outside. It's all the time sleepwalking. And so these are not my memories. These are what have been told to me. So all the doors in the house had latches on it. So then I went around and couldn't get out anywhere. So I started turning on all the lights. This is not well received by your parents to have every light turned on. And I won't go into it much more, but there was also the phase where I went around and turned on all the faucets. I'll stop there. 17% of all children sleepwalk, but only 4% of adults. With sleepwalking and other forms of sleep, it's best not to wake up the person too suddenly. Besides startling the sleeper, it can be dangerous for the one doing the waking. For a startled sleeper can thrash out violently, and no one benefits from being woken suddenly. It's best to go slow, smoothly from sleep to being woke. Let's transition from the physical to the spiritual. Being asleep with all its variations is a powerful metaphor for spiritual slumber. Spiritual slumber is a term from the Christian Bible, Romans chapter 11, verse 8. The context of this verse is that St. Paul was explaining to the Romans that some people, and some people means Jews and Gentiles in this setting, some people will hear and believe the message of Christ, and others won't. He wrote about those who don't believe with this passage. According as it is written, God hath given them the spirit of slumber, eyes that they should not see, and ears that they should not hear. Spiritual slumber, not being awake to what the universe is offering us. Are you asleep spiritually? Are your eyes open so that you can see the world as it is? Are your ears open to the sounds of joy and sorrow in the world? There's another Bible passage that I want to share with you this morning. Maybe you've heard about Solomon and how wise he was. And one of the more famous stories that's ubiquitous in our culture is about the dispute over a child, over a baby. And anybody heard this? Cut the baby, and have you heard? Okay, good. Okay. there's a lot more to the story if you read before his ruling. And it's in the Hebrew Bible, 1 Kings chapter 3. And I want to use it for today's lessons. Two women in a house. They both had had a child recently, and they were sleeping in the same room. One of the women fell asleep on her baby and then killed it. It was dead. The woman woke up and realized the horror of it and also the sorrow, and noticed that the other woman's baby was still okay. So she switched them. She put her dead baby with the mother, and then she kept the live baby. That was the beginning of the dispute. The woman woke up with a dead child and said, "This is not my child. That's my child." And so they got into the big row and ultimately went to King Solomon. But I want to point out the woman sleeping with the child, her true mother. If you've ever been a mother, you know what mother radar is. You can sense when something's going on. You can sense something, even in the next room, you know when something's going on. It's a link to that child. This woman apparently didn't have it because the baby could be swapped. But the way I interpret it, the woman did become awake when she finally realized, and Solomon said, cut the baby in half. She woke up saying, like, no, it's better. It's better for the child to be alive. Give it to the other one. She woke up. Anthony DeMillo, an Indian Jesuit priest and psychotherapist, spiritual teacher, writer, public speaker, wrote several books, and I've read one recently I really enjoyed, Awakening. In there, he writes, life is a banquet, and the tragedy is that most people are starving to death. Most people have no idea whatsoever of what's going on. The reason? They're brainwashed. They're hypnotized. They're asleep. Life is a banquet. By being alive, you have won the cosmic lottery. I mean, maybe it's an accident that you're alive, but I believe the odds are overwhelmingly against you being a random freak of nature and all of a sudden appeared. But yet, as precious as this limited life is, so many of us are walking around in our sleep, not noticing, not caring, not seeing, or worse, some are so worried about things they cannot control that they're asleep thinking they're awake. It's tempting to go into spiritual slumber, to not notice another person's pain, to not notice social injustice, to not care about another person's condition, not to feel your own pain. It's easy to turn away. But when we are in spiritual slumber, we aren't living fully. We aren't fulfilling our calling in life. And we're missing out on the great and nuanced beauty of this incredible, amazing life. You're already sleeping a third of your life. Don't spend 100% of your life being asleep. Are you in spiritual slumber? Do you slip into that state occasionally? If you do, that's okay. You've been through a lot recently, and it's okay to be numb to try and survive. Being asleep helped you survive. But I hope you don't stay asleep. It's time to wake up. But let's wake up slowly. It's a beautiful, beautiful world worth experiencing. And next week, we'll talk about what it means to be awake, fully awake. But for now, I'll walk with you. Let's yawn, let's stretch, and let's slowly wake up. It's beautiful out there. It's beautiful in here. Amen. And blessed be.